Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Let me just share my screen. Is everybody seeing the screen? Can somebody respond? At least one person?
Yes, we're seeing. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, Prabhu, we
Hare
can see.
Krishna. Okay, good. Thank you. So, Prabhupada Dev, he announced that it should be the process of worship. But being the month of Kartik, and specifically the month of Damodara, I thought we would do worship, but specifically the worship as done by the Brajbasis, and specifically the worship as done in this Lila by Mother Yasoda. Because this kind of worship, it pleases Krishna the most. This love that the Brajabasis have is of a special flavor that it completely controls Krishna, so much so that Krishna completely forgets that he also has a job to do as God and just becomes so absorbed in playing and doing things and interacting with the residents of Vrindavan in such a way that both their love increases for him with every incident that happens in Vrindavan. And as a result of seeing their love increase on a daily basis, in fact, on a moment by moment basis, Krishna's love and reciprocation with them also increases. So, therefore, Vrindavan is described to be an ever increasing festival of prema, or love between the Lord and his devotees. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is specifically given to highlight these pastimes, how Krishna becomes completely subjugated by the love of his devotees. from the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Jhanmad yasetan vayad itaratas charteshu abhigya swarat. That Krishna, who having appeared in Mathura, Janmadi Asya, he appeared in Mathura in the prison house of Kamsa, immediately went to Nanda Gokul. He knew what was going on, but immediately he went to Nanda Gokul. Janma dyasa yataha anvayad itaratas charteshu abhigya swarat. He went there to experience the love of the devotees of Vrindavan. And so, in these four classes, I've divided into four broad headings. In this first class, we will more or less get an introduction into the Damodara Lila, which is the highlight. So this class would sort of cover in a summary form from the first chapter of the 10th canto, the significant pastimes that takes place, up and until Krishna reveals the universal form to Mother Yasoda for the second time in the 8th chapter of the 10th canto. And then in the subsequent three classes, we'll discuss in two classes the Yasoda Damodara Lila in some detail. The first class will discuss the churning and the breaking of the pot in that first class. Well, not first class, but second class, which is Wednesday. The following Monday, we'll discuss the chase and the binding. The chase that took place between Yasoda and Krishna, and how finally she was able to bind him. And on the final day, we'll discuss the freeing of the Yamala Arjuna trees, who were none other than the sons of the treasurer of the demigods, Kuvera, who were Nala Kuvara and Manigriv, and also how the Damodar pastime came to its conclusion. So this is the proposed agenda for the next 4 days. And I've purposely entitled these series of lectures Yasoda, Lord Damodar's mother, because she is the one who is the hero of this pastime, not Krishna. The whole point of the month of Kartik is that it is a celebration of the love, first, that the devotee has for Krishna, and the quality of that love that it controls Krishna. And from Krishna's side, how he reciprocates with that love and increases the love of his devotee. So this is the whole point of Kartik. And I was making this point because I was reflecting on this, that when we celebrate Janmashtami, it's one day. When we celebrate Radhashtami, one day. When we celebrate Gaura Purnima, Nityananda Trayodashi, all these days, one day, finished. And sometimes after half day, finished. By just after lunch, take a feast and finished. But when we celebrate the love of a devotee and the influence it has on Krishna and how Krishna reciprocates with that love an entire month, just to even try to come to terms. And therefore, because of that nature of this month, when we have that meditation and perform devotional service and that consciousness in this month, the benefit increases because we do it in consciousness of taking shelter of the devotees and trying to imbibe the love that they have for Krishna. That we'll discuss specifically how Srila Prabhupada invites us to that meditation in the next class. But today, we'll begin discussing Krishna's Lila and how it has the ability to purify us. So, In the 7th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj speaks these two verses. Yena yena avatarena Bhagavan Harit Ishvara Karoti Karnaramyani Manogyani Chaya Prabhu Yat Trinvato Apaiti Aratir Vitrishna Satyam Chashudyati Achirena Pumsaha Bhaktir Harau Tat Purushe Chasakyam Tadeva Haram Vadamanyasechit. Very, very beautiful verses. And why does he speak these verses? Up until this point, 6 chapters of the 10th canto have gone. In the 6th chapter of the 10th canto, Shukadeva Goswami spoke about the killing of Putana. And in the final verse of that chapter, he gives a Palstuti. And he outlined the benefits of hearing about Krishna's killing of Putana. And he says that if you hear this, you'll become purified, but you should continue to hear. So Parikshit Maharaj, he's been hearing and he's very enthusiastic. And he's thinking that Shukadeva Goswami, normally the phal comes at the end. So does it mean that Shukadeva Goswami, he's going to wrap up very quickly? But I asked him that he should speak at length. But it seems that Shukadeva Goswami, he's trying to cheat me. He wants to cut short the class. Maybe he's interested in prasad. I don't know. But I am fasting, but I'm not interested. But why is Shukadeva Goswami trying to cut the class? Or is he trying to do that? I don't know. So he's speaking these verses to Shukadeva Goswami as if to say that, oh Shukadeva Goswami, that I ask you, yat shrotavyam ato japyam. What should I hear about and what should I chant about? And you have emphatically said that Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvara Hari Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavya Chechatha Bhayam. Almost the same line there. Bhagavan Hari Ishvara, but just this line, Bhagavan Ishvaru Hari. I ask you what I should hear about, what I should chant about. Yat Shrotavyam Atho Japya. What should I do? What should I hear about? And you have told me that if I want to become free of all fear, I should shrotavya, I should hear about, kirtitavyascha, I should speak about constantly, and smartavyascha, I should remember constantly the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Sarvatma, who is Bhagavan, who is Ishvara, who is Hari. You told me this. But it seems now that you want to cut short. But why do you want to do this, Shukadeva Goswami? You told me already. And therefore, yena avatarena, Bhagavan Hari Ishvara, that Krishna, he has so many incarnations. This Bhagavan, this Hari, this Ishvara has so many pastimes and so many incarnations. It seems that you have teased me and you have tried to test my determination to hear at length these pastimes of Govinda, which completely eradicate the urges of the senses and completely enlivens the senses to supreme spiritual bliss. And you have done this by speaking just a few verses at the end of the 9th canto. And therefore, I've requested you that, oh great sage, you know everything about Krishna, that you please describe in detail. I want to hear in detail, vicheshtitam, what activities that the Lord does. And I want you to answer the questions that I've asked and the questions that I haven't asked, but you know is there within my heart. Because I have very full faith in you, because you know everything. This is your standard, that you are superlative in quantity as an acharya, as a guru, and therefore you could sufficiently answer these questions. And if you think that my mind, because of fasting, has become distracted, has become fatigued from hearing at length over these last few days, Then Naisati dukshahakshunmam tyaktudam apibhadate pibantam twatmukam boja chutam harikatamratam. That don't think that because I've taken this vow and I'm on the verge of death and I've given up drinking water even, I'm not feeling fatigued. I'm not feeling any fatigue. Why? Because even though I've given up eating, I've given up drinking water, my life has become superlatively sustained and enlivened because I'm drinking the nectar of the topics about Krishna, which is flowing from your lotus mouth. And therefore, my dear Lord, hunger and thirst, which are extremely difficult to bear, cannot hinder me. And therefore, my dear Shukadev Goswami, do not think that I am disturbed in any way. My only disturbance is that you might stop speaking. And therefore, yena avatarena Bhagavan Haririshwara Karoti Karna Ramyani Manogyani Chaya Prabhu Yat Trinvatu Apaiti Aratir Vitrishna Satyam Cha Shuddhyatyachena Pumsaha Bhaktir Harau Tat Purushena Chasakyam Tadeva Haram Paramanya Sechit. And this is the translation. That, my dear Lord, Shukadev Goswami, all the varieties of activities that have been exhibited by the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are certainly pleasing to the ear and to the mind. That simply by one's hearing of these activities, the dirty things in one's mind immediately vanish. Generally, we are reluctant to hear about the activities of the Lord. But Krishna's childhood activities are so attractive that they are automatically pleasing to the mind and ear. Thus, one's attachment for hearing about material things, which is the root cause of material existence, vanishes. And gradually, one develops devotional service to the Supreme Lord. He develops attachment for Him. And he also develops friendship with the devotees who give us the contribution of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Shukadev Goswami, if you think it fitting, kindly speak about those activities of the Lord. So if you hear somebody asking you that type of question, what will you do? So Shukadev Goswami, he has to speak. And it is described, and I actually asked this question to one devotee who is like to put it in a very simple way, this devotee is like a volcano of Krishna Katha. And that is His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu. He's a disciple of His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami. And he produces these Kathamrita Bindu magazines, and he publishes the books of Srila Gaur Govinda Swami after editing them from lectures. And we were speaking just recently, and I asked him that, certainly, as we'll discuss in the next class, that Shukadev Goswami, he is definitely of the nature of the love of the residents of Vrindavan. And I was asking him, because I was reflecting on that in this pastime, that for Parikshit Maharaj to ask the questions that he's asking, certainly he must have some connection to Vrindavan. And this was bothering me. Like, who is Parikshit? And so I posed this question to him. And he said that actually, like, despite his extensive study of the Vaishnava Shastras, especially the commentaries and the writings of so many Vaishnava Acharyas, he has not been able to ascertain who Maharaj Parikshit is, if he has some special position. But we could definitely know that Parikshit Maharaj is not an ordinary devotee. Why? Because Krishna chose him to reveal his pastimes in Vrindavan through. And therefore, by the conversation of Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, the pastimes of Krishna, especially his pastimes of the 10th canto, and especially his pastimes of the Vrindavan portion of the 10th canto, are able to float to the surface. So in these two verses, Hare Krishna. In these two verses, Parikshit Maharaj gives 7 reasons why he wants to hear Krishna Katha. 7 reasons why he wants to hear Krishna. So the first reason is Karna Ramyani, that to hear about Krishna is very pleasing to the ear. Manojnani is very attractive to the mind. So the first two qualities of hearing Krishna's pastimes, especially Krishna's childhood Lila, is that it is very pleasing to the ear, and secondly, it is very attractive to the mind. So how is Krishna's pastimes, or how are Krishna's pastimes attractive to the ear and to the mind? They are very pleasing to the ear because of the meter, and they are very pleasing to the mind because of the meaning. So when we hear the verses of the 10th canto especially, in fact of the entire Bhagavatam, just the excellence of how these verses are composed, it brings so much delight to the ear, especially when we hear devotees who are very expert in chanting the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It causes so much delight. It's like a festival for the ears. But when that devotee is able to unlock and unpack the inner meaning of what is being spoken in these verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, it attracts the mind. But the problem is that we do not want to hear. We have no desire to hear. We have disinterest in hearing. Apaiti aratir. But what is the cure for that disinterest in hearing? Shrinvato. By hearing the pastimes of Krishna, our disinterest for hearing is diminished little by little and eventually destroyed. In other words, by hearing about Krishna, our interest in wanting to hear about Krishna increases. And therefore, one of the 5 most potent forms of devotional service, if Srimad Bhagavata Aswade Rasikaisaha, to, in the company of devotees, hear and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam specifically has this quality that when we hear about Krishna as described in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, our attraction to want to hear more and more and more increases. But sometimes we find that when we are hearing, we have an inability to relish the katha. Therefore, what do? Apaiti aratir vitrishna. By continuously hearing, our ability to relish while hearing is diminished. Our inability, to relish while hearing is diminished. And while we are in the activity of hearing Krishna Katha, we are more focused and we are able to relish and drink the nectar of the Bhagavatam as it is emanating from the lips of the devotees. And what happens? As our interest for hearing about Krishna increases, as our ability to remain focused in hearing Krishna Katha increases, what happens? Sattvam chashudyati achirena pumshaha. Our heart becomes completely purified. And when the heart becomes purified, bhaktir harao, our devotion to Krishna increases. And naturally, when our devotion to Krishna increases, tat puruche sasakyam, that our friendship and our love for the devotees of Krishna also increases. And therefore, Parikshit Maharaj is saying, my dear Shukadev Goswami, do not think that I am satisfied to hear. I like to hear. It is very pleasing to my ears. Just hearing you speak, the meaning is becoming revealed within my heart. Don't mind that I haven't eaten, I haven't drunk anything, I haven't slept. I have a keen interest to hear. and my attention is very fixed while you are speaking, and my heart is purified by the words coming out from your lotus mouth, and my attraction and devotion for Krishna is increasing with every word, and my love for the devotees is increasing. Therefore, Shukadev Goswami, please speak about Krishna's childhood pastimes at length. So this is Parikshit Maharaj's mood in wanting to hear about Krishna. And we should know that Srimad Bhagavatam has about 355 chapters, somewhere thereabout. The 10th and 11th canto, which specifically describes the pastimes of Krishna, contains about 119 plus 90 plus 121 chapters. And out of these, about 45 chapters thereabout deals with Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, where his childhood Lila and Leelas with the residents of Vrindavan are described. So almost about 20% of the entire Bhagavatam, or close to 20% of the entire Bhagavatam, are Krishna's Vrindavan Lila. And out of the entire Bhagavatam, almost half is Krishna's personal pastimes. And therefore, the whole Bhagavatam is meant to give us entry. And therefore, the first 9 cantos help us to come to terms with understanding the greatness of God. And when we properly understand the greatness of God, the 10th canto introduces us to the sweetness of God. And therefore, the 10th canto is especially pleasing. The first 9 cantos are meant to purify the consciousness to such an extent that when we hear something in the 10th canto, we don't have to question it. But all those questions should be answered from cantos 1 through 9. And by the 10th canto is just to sit and hear and relish. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, I was mentioning this morning in our Bhagavatam class in Trinidad, that Rasam Alaya, that Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. In the second verse, the third verse of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described Rasam Alaya. So one meaning given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is Laya means Pralaya, which is one of the Satvika Bhavas, whereby the devotee in ecstasy faints in love for Krishna. So he says Bhagavatam is so excellent in giving rasa. It is rasam alayam, that when you drink this rasa, laya, you faint. But muhuraho, after the effect of the rasa which cause you to faint wears off, then you must get up and drink again and again faint. So the 10th canto especially is that, to drink the nectar of Krishna's pastimes and become completely stupefied in ecstasy in Krishna's Vrindavan Lila, in Krishna's childhood pastimes. So in this way, Parikshit Maharaj is very eager to hear about Krishna. So what has happened so far? What has been spoken so far that Parikshit Maharaj is so excited? So Krishna apparently appeared to Vasudeva and Devaki in the prison house of Kamsa, and Vasudev took Krishna across the Yamuna to Nanda Gokul, and he took Krishna's younger sister, or the girl born to Yasoda, back to the jail of Kamsa. So Krishna, from his very birth, he transferred himself to Gokul, where he would spend time with the residents of Vrindavan. When he was practically fresh out of his mother's womb, so to say, the witch Putana came with the intention to kill Krishna by the poison smeared on her breast. But Krishna sucked the poison out, sucked her life out, and Dhatri gave her the position of nursemaid in the Golok Vrindavan in the spiritual world. So in this way, he gave exceptional mercy to Putana, who came to kill him in Vrindavan. Then Krishna, he killed the Shakatasura demon. The Shakatasura demon was like a ghost, and he went into this cart that Nanda Maharaj had on display some precious family heirlooms that had been handed down from generation to generation. And this was during the Uttana festival. The Uttana festival is the festival where the baby begins to turn for the first time. And therefore the ladies take charge to celebrate that, and the men assist. So Krishna had become very sleepy and very tired, so he was put on a cot near to this cart of heirlooms, and he kicked it with his foot, and the demon immediately became killed. And then immediately everybody rushed over to see what happened to Krishna. Later on, the demon Trinavarta came and took Krishna on a tour of the whole of Vrindavan. So Krishna can get an aerial view of the different places where in future he would perform so many pastimes to delight the residents of Vrindavan. But Krishna, with his arms, he held on to the neck of Trinavarta. He became a little bit scared when he went up so high. And Trinavarta felt like if a huge weight was around his neck. And Krishna pulled him down to the ground, and Trinavarta was killed. So in this way, Krishna is killing so many demons just as a child. Just as a child. And the residents of Vrindavan are becoming more and more amazed. And the nature of the residents of Vrindavan is that when they see these pastimes taking place, their love for Krishna increases with every incident. With every incident, their love increases. And then, being encouraged by Vasudev, Garga Muni comes with the intention to perform the name-giving ceremony of Krishna. But he advises them, if I do this publicly, it may create some suspicion. Because I am associated with Vasudeva and Devaki, that if I do this name ceremony here, they will immediately think that this is the children of Vasudeva and Devaki, and he will come here with the intention to kill. And then he, incognito, in a very private manner, performs the pastime of giving Krishna and Balaram their names in a cowshed. And he gives some indication that, my dear Nanda Maharaj, your son is Narayana Sama. He is in every respect equal to Narayan. Therefore, you should take very good care of him. Very good care of him. So in this way, so many different childhood pastimes of Krishna are going on. And at this point in time, Krishna is still a baby. So what happens after this? Krishna, Bhagavatam describes, in the company of Balaram, they begin to crawl just as ordinary babies. And where would they crawl? They would crawl through the muddy places of Vrindavan. Now, what was creating the mud of Vrindavan? The cow dung and the cow urine that would be produced by the millions of cows that would be walking all over Vrindavan, in and around the palace and in the courtyard and so many things. And they would be crawling, and sometimes they would be crawling dressed only in the four directions with a little jewelry. Sometimes their mothers would put ankle bells on them. Sometimes they would put a jeweled belt with bells on it around their waist. Other than that, nothing. They were decorated with the dust of Vrindavan, the cow urine, and the cow dung. And in this way, Krishna and Balaram would be crawling. And they were so attractive that when they crawled, the sound of their ankle bells was very charming. And the residents of Vrindavan would become almost wonderstruck just seeing these two boys crawling and hearing the sound of their ankle bells. That even Krishna would be attracted by the sound of ankle bells because they knew, Krishna and Balaram knew that their mothers also wore ankle bells. So hearing the ankle bells and thinking it to be produced of their mothers, they would crawl and go towards the sound of these ankle bells. And when they would lift their little heads up, they would see that, oh, this is not Yashoda, this is not Rohini, and they'll become very scared and begin to cry. And very hurriedly they will creep away and go back to where their mothers were, Yashoda and Rohini. And this would delight the residents of Vrindavan. Hearing other people's ankle bells, thinking it to be that of their mothers, they would go, become scared, and then immediately creep back to Rohini and Yashoda. Excuse me. Sometimes crawling around on the ground, they were thoroughly covered in dust, cow dung, and cow urine. And when their mothers saw them, they would be so spontaneously attracted to their natural beauty that milk would spontaneously begin to flow from their breasts, and they would grab them and begin to nurse them out of motherly affection. And one time, Mother Yashoda, when she was nursing him, she decided just to put her fingers in Krishna's mouth and she just separated his mouth a little bit. Because why? Krishna's baby teeth were coming in. And so she wanted to see how Krishna's pearls were as beautiful just as little pearls. His teeth were as beautiful as little pearls in his mouth. And so she looked inside his mouth and she saw universal form. What did Mother Yashoda start to do? She prayed to Lord Vishnu, my dear Lord, please free my child from this disturbance. Let's imagine this. Mother Yashoda, she's praying to Lord Vishnu to free Krishna from this disturbance, thinking something was wrong with Krishna because she was seeing the universal form within his mouth. And all she wanted to do was see how his teeth were growing. One time, Krishna, he began to cry uncontrollably. And some elder gopis were there. And they said, Krishna, what do you want? Do you want some yogurt? No. Do you want some milk? No. Do you want some butter? No. Do you want some cheese? No. They said, but Krishna, what do you want? And Krishna lifted his hand and pointed into the sky. And they saw the moon. And they said, well, Krishna, what do you want? He said, I want this freshly condensed butter. So they said, this freshly condensed butter. Yashoda said that is not something that you eat, my dear child. That is a Rajahamsa. It is a great swan just gliding across the sky. So Krishna said that, but still, I want to eat that. Well, if I cannot eat it, then get me that thing. Let me play with this swan. So she said, no, no, no. You see those dark spots on the moon? That is poison. You cannot have that. So how is it poison? What is poison? I don't know what is poison. So then she said, well, let me tell you how that poison came. And then Yashoda begins to tell Krishna the story of how the demigods and demons churned the ocean of milk with the serpent Vasuki as a churning rope and the Mandarachala hill as a churning rod. So Krishna said, so Maya, so the demigods and the demons, they churn just like gopis? She said, yes. So what did they churn? She said, well, they churn an ocean of milk, my son. An ocean of milk, Maya? How many cows did it take to make that? I said, no, no, no. It's not that you need cows to make that ocean of milk. It was not produced by cows. So Krishna became confused. Like, how could you have an ocean of milk, but no cows? But she said, no, no, just listen to the story, Lala. You just listen. And she said, but this poison was produced, and Lord Shiva, he drank this poison. But some of the poison, it fell on that moon. And therefore that spot is there. So that is not a good thing for you to play with. Don't be too attracted to that. And Krishna, with that, hearing this story, he fell asleep. The next morning he was upset. He said, Mother, you lied to me. You didn't feed me, you left me hungry, and you told me these funny stories, and you made me sleep. And in this way, Krishna was delighting uh, the residents of Vrindavan, especially his mother, with his childhood activities. But as Krishna grew older, his activities changed and his naughtiness increased. His naughtiness as a child increased. And what would he do? It is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll read. He would begin to steal butter and other milk products from the house of the elder gopis. And the gopis would come to Mother Yasoda to complain. They said, "Oh, dear friend Yasoda, your son sometimes comes to our houses before the milking of the cows. And what he does, he releases the calves, and when the master of the house becomes angry, your son merely smiles. Sometimes he devises some process by which he steals very palatable yogurt, butter, and milk, which he eats and drinks, and when the monkeys assemble, he divides it with them. When the monkeys have their bellies so full that they won't take any more, he breaks the pots. Sometimes, if he gets no opportunity to steal that butter from or milk from a house, he will be angry at the householders, and for his revenge, he will pinch the small children and agitate them. And when the children begin crying, Krishna will go away. When the milk and yogurt are kept very high, as in this picture here, on a swing hanging from the ceiling, and when Krishna and Balaram cannot reach it, they arrange to reach it by pulling up various planks and turning it upside down. The mortar for grinding spices. Being quite aware of the contents of the pot, they peck holes in it. While the elder gopis go about their household affairs, Krishna and Balaram sometimes go into a dark room. Brightening the place with their valuable jewels and ornaments on their bodies, and taking advantage of this light, they steal. When Krishna is caught in his naughty activities, the master of the house will say to him, "Oh, you are a thief," and artificially express anger at Krishna. Krishna will reply, "I am not a thief. You are a thief." And the acharyas comment that the language of the Bhagavatam is very nice, but sometimes Krishna's language is not so nice. Shivaram Swami, he was giving some lectures on this Damodara Lila, and he says that Krishna actually swears at the residents of Vrindavan. He uses very, very foul language at them sometimes as he's growing up. And they become so alarmed, but at the same time, the affection for Krishna in their heart also increases by Krishna's use of this language. And one can say that this language of Krishna, when he sometimes uses foul language at the residents of Vrindavan, is more satisfying and more nectarian than all the different mantras of the Vedic scriptures. Krishna is using foul language at the residents of Vrindavan. And sometimes, being angry, Krishna passes urine and stool in a very neat and clean place in our house. But now, our dear friend Yashoda, this expert thief is sitting right here before you, like a very good boy. Sometimes all the gopis would look at Krishna sitting there, his eyes fearful, so that his mother would not chastise him. But when they saw Krishna's beautiful face, instead of chastising him, they would simply look upon his face and enjoy transcendental bliss. Mother Yashoda would mildly smile at all this fun, and she would not want to chastise her blessed transcendental child. In fact, sometimes she would say, "You know what? I will tell Nanda Maharaj, and he will deal with Krishna." But the thing is, Nanda Maharaj was more lenient than Krishna. So when he hears these things, he would laugh more than Mother Yashoda. So in this way, Krishna would do these things in the houses of the other gopis. The other gopis would bring the complaints to Mother Yashoda, and a very interesting thing takes place. Mother Yashoda is not directly experiencing these stealing pastimes and these naughty pastimes of Krishna, but she's hearing it from the other elderly gopis of Vrindavan. And in this way, Mother Yashoda's her intense pleasure at hearing these pastimes increases in her heart. That these gopis are more fortunate than me. That Krishna, he doesn't do these things in my house, so I cannot get that experience. But still, I am so fortunate that I'm hearing these pastimes from them, and my pleasure is increasing. So Mother Yashoda, she also delights in hearing Krishna's pastimes. So in this way, Krishna performs so many different pastimes and delights the residents of Vrindavan. But then a very interesting thing takes place. Krishna, a complaint was levied on Krishna. Some of the boys went to Mother Yashoda and they told him that Mother Yashoda, Krishna has eaten dirt. Krishna has eaten dirt. And Mother Yashoda, she becomes very alarmed that, my dear son, am I not feeding you any sweets? You're not interested in eating what I have at home. You are eating dirt. And Krishna said, Maya, I did not eat any dirt. Those boys, they are telling lies against me. They have formed a conspiracy against me. Something was happening when we were playing, and they became angry with me, and they decided to form a conspiracy against me. So the question is, did Krishna eat dirt? Yes. Did Krishna lie? Yes. Why did he lie? Because he was fearful that he would be beaten by Mother Yashoda. Because sometimes Mother Yashoda would threaten him indirectly. So Krishna was fearful that he would be chastised by Mother Yashoda, punished. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains that this exchange between a mother and a child is natural. It is natural. And it does not come from a bad place. It springs, especially in this case, and it is reflected in the material world, in the relationship between a mother and a child. It springs from Krishna's natural Bhakta Vatsalya. And it nourishes, when he lies to Mother Yashoda, Mother Yashoda's natural love for Krishna in the mood of a parent increases. And Krishna says to her, I did not eat. If you think that I ate and they are true, then look into my mouth. And Krishna shows the universal form to Mother Yashoda because he's afraid at what she will do if she sees dirt in his mouth. So he shows her every single thing in creation. And she sees in his mouth all the planetary systems, all the universes, and she sees herself inside of Krishna's mouth, looking into Krishna's mouth inside. Very amazing darshan she has. And then something happens. She begins to think, but what is this happening here? Is it that Krishna Is it that Krishna is some great personality? Garga Muni has given some indication. Is this a dream which was created by the external energy? But it cannot be a dream. I am waking. Is this a product of my intelligence? What is going on here? Let me just simply offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord. That it is only by the influence of the Supreme Lord that his Maya is making me think that Nanda Maharaj is my husband. Only because I'm under the influence of the Lord's Maya, I am thinking Krishna is my son, and all these things, that all these subjects I have, all these possessions I have, it is because I am in Maya. But then Krishna thinks, but if my mother develops this gyan and she thinks that I am not her son, that I am some personality and she's under Maya, then who will feed me? Who will protect me? Who will take care of me? Who will tell me stories at night when I'm ready to sleep? Who will embrace me? Who will give me their breast to nourish me with their prema? And Krishna becomes scared that his mother might disregard him. And therefore, sensing Krishna is becoming scared, then again Krishna's yoga maya acts as per Krishna's desire and influences Mother Yashoda. And she thinks, but anyhow, forget this thing. Let me just take care of my son. Let me just take care of my son. So again, we come to Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj is hearing this, all these pastimes taking place, and he's hearing about the love of Mother Yashoda, that she's only thinking that Krishna is her son. And Shukadev Goswami, when he describes this pastime, it is as if he goes into ecstasy and he speaks one verse. Trayachopaniषद्भिश्च Sankhya-yogaischa sattvatai upagiyamana mahatmyam harim samanyatatmajam. He says that the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are studied through the three Vedas, the Upanishads, the literature of Sankhya Yoga, and other Vaishnava literature. Yet Mother Yashoda considered that Supreme Person to be her son. This is the 45th verse of the 10th canto, 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is a very, very important verse. And it shows why Mother Yashoda is so special. That Mother Yashoda considered that Supreme Person to be just her child. Nothing more, nothing less. He is my child. If I do not feed him, he will go hungry. When there's rain in Vrindavan and there's thunder, he becomes scared and he jumps onto my lap. Even when he crawls to the gate and he sees that the two lions that adorn the pillars on either side of the entrance to our house, he sees those lions and he becomes afraid and runs to me for shelter. So, what all the Upanishads are teaching, what Sankhya is teaching, what all varieties of worship are teaching, the individual how to realize God, Mother Yashoda is thinking, he is just my son. That is all. He is just my son. So Parikshit Maharaj hears this and he says, but what austerities did Yashoda and Nanda perform to achieve such perfection and ecstatic love? That Yashoda and Nanda, their position is even greater than that of Devaki and Vasudeva. Why? Because they fully enjoyed Krishna's childhood pastimes. And Yashoda even would regularly feed Krishna the milk of her breast. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking, this is a very interesting thing here. Shukadev Goswami, how is this possible? Previously, it was indicated that Krishna appeared as the son of Devaki, but Yashoda is getting all this benefit. And she's only thinking of Krishna as her son. And I just saw that you were speaking this verse and you were practically lifting off of your seat in ecstasy. But I want to know, there must be some hidden meaning. Please describe it to me. So then Shukadev Goswami, he gives some description that there was a Vasu couple named Drona and Dhara, and they asked Lord Brahma that they should be born on the planet where Krishna is about to appear to spread the devotional service for himself. In other words, they want to appear before Krishna, and Krishna should appear as their son. And Brahma agreed, let it be so. And therefore Drona and Dhara, who were equal to Krishna, appeared in Brajabhumi as Nanda and Yashoda. Please forgive some of the editing mistakes. And when Krishna appeared as their son, they maintained continuous and unswerving parental affection for him, and they inspired the same in others. Now, these are some very interesting things that are being said here. Excuse. Is it that Lord Brahma is granting the position of being Krishna's parents to two demigods? That they went to Brahma and they asked, we want to be blessed that we appear before Krishna. Krishna appears as our child. And Brahma said, let it be so. And therefore, by the benediction of Brahma, they appear as Nanda and Yashoda. So, who are these people in relation to Nanda and Yashoda? So we'll answer that shortly. So I was sort of thinking about this this recent Janmashtami, that Krishna appears as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, but Krishna is born as Yashoda's and Nanda's son. And we'll see how this relates to Drona and Dhara. In the 4th chapter, 12th verse of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Yogamaya is taken by Vasudev from Vrindavan and goes back to the prison house of Kamsa, and Kamsa grabs the child, she immediately steps on his head and goes into the sky. And she says that Jata Khalu Tavantakrit, that person who would kill you has already been born somewhere else. The person who would kill you has already been born. He didn't say he is somewhere else. A very interesting thing. That person who would kill you has been born somewhere else. In other words, I was born to Mother Yashoda, and that person was also born, and therefore I am Anuja. I am the younger sister of Krishna. So what is happening here? When Krishna appears as Vishnu to Vasudeva and Devaki, they then become fearful and ask him, now you then become a child, because they are aware of his opulence and they are influenced by it. So Krishna appears as Vishnu, then transforms into a child. But Krishna, he appears as a regular infant to Yashoda and Nanda, and they know Krishna, he's only my son. They are not aware of Krishna's majesty of God. And the difference here is Aishwarya and Madhurya. That there are some devotees whose natural inclination is that the majesty of and the opulence of the Lord influences their bhakti. But in Vrindavan, the opulence of Vaikuntha does not influence their devotion. So therefore, Yashoda and Nanda, are very, very special devotees as residents of Vrindavan. So the question might be, why does Srimad Bhagavatam explicitly say that Devaki gave birth to Krishna? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in commenting on this verse, he says that Yashoda and Devaki were very good friends. And Yashoda gave Da, meaning Dadati, the fame, Yasha, of being Krishna's mother to Devaki. So therefore Bhagavatam highlights Krishna's appearing to Devaki as opposed to Yashoda. It is just hinted, it is very secret. Very secret. Another evidence given in the Brihad Vishnu Purana, where it states that the wife of Nanda had two names, Yashoda and Devaki, and therefore naturally had an affection for the wife of Vasudeva, Devaki. Another evidence is given that Shukadev repeatedly refers to Yashoda as Gopika Sutta, the son of Mother Yashoda. The son of Mother Yashoda in this pastime as well as other places, and that is also confirmed by Srila Prabhupada, who also confirms that Krishna, especially Krishna in Vrindavan specifically, is Yashoda's and nobody else's son. There's some other evidence. Devaki and Vasudev did not get the opportunity to relish the childhood pastimes of Krishna. And Parikshit Maharaj has already said that Yashoda's love was actually greater than Devaki's. It's very interesting, like all these different points. It shows why Yashoda is superlative as a devotee, especially as Krishna's mother. Especially as Krishna's mother. And why is that? Because Devaki and Vasudev's love is mixed with Aishwarya. And Gyan. And therefore, their bhakti in experiencing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan would have been out of place. Because the love of Vrindavan is not governed by these two principles of Aishwarya, opulence, and Gyan, knowledge of Krishna's position as God. And Jiva Goswami says something very emphatic in the Krishna Sandarbha. He says, the strength of one's parental love and not the mere act of giving birth is what defines someone as a parent. And therefore, it is not that because the Bhagavatam described Krishna's appearance as the son of Devaki means that she is in a greater position in prema than Yashoda. And therefore, Parikshit has already confirmed that Yashoda's love was greater than that of Devaki. So it comes back to the question, who are these Drona and Dhara in relation to Nanda and Yashoda? These persons, Drona and Dhara, they are actually expansions of Nanda and Yashoda in the material world. And therefore, it is not that Nanda Brahma can give that opportunity to become Krishna's parents. Nanda and Yashoda are eternally Krishna's parents. It is not that in the next day of Brahma, some fortunate jivas would get the opportunity to act the role of Krishna's parents, almost as if, they win it in a lottery. It is very rare, one in so many billions of chances, but if you do things right, you just might have a chance. No. The position of Krishna's mother and Krishna's father and Krishna's eternal associates are all eternal positions which are of the nature of Krishna's internal potency being moved by the potency of the Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. They are not jivas who have been elevated to that position, but they are manifestations of Krishna's own internal potency. And therefore, they exist eternally. And therefore, in a previous slide, as quoted from Bhagavatam, it is said that they are equal to Bhagavan. Why are they equal to Bhagavan? Because they are of the nature of Krishna, for the purpose of giving pleasure to Krishna in the capacity of his parents. And especially Mother Yasoda is the epitome of the Vatsalya Ras. In fact, her very form is the form of parental affection for Krishna. And therefore, when Brahma says, so be it, you appear as Nanda and Yashoda, it is not that he is telling them do it, but he is just saying that yes, this is going to happen, not by my instruction or by my potency to give something, because I cannot give something that I do not have. But this is the desire of the Lord, and therefore you please fulfill the desire of the Lord. And therefore, when Nanda and Yashoda, the original parents of Krishna, appear, then that Drona and Dhara, who are their own expansions, enter into them and also get the experience of the prema of Nanda and Yashoda in the purest manifestation of Vatsalya Ras. This is the opinion of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Therefore, when we have the opportunity to read this pastime of Yashoda binding Krishna, it is the epitome of the love that a mother has for her child, that it completely subjugates that child. And the love of the child completely overwhelms the very being and the very existence of that mother. And therefore, this pastime of Yashoda Damodar, which is celebrated for an entire month, is a testament that the Lord is not controlled by even all the mantras of the Vedas, Trayachopanishadbhishcha. But when we develop that I and my towards Krishna, following in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, which is the purpose of this month of Kartik, to instill and to ignite that flame of desire within our consciousness, to develop that type of attraction that the residents of Vrindavan has for Krishna. Then that is the actual purpose that we are being fulfilled, because it completely controls Krishna. And this love is being glorified in this month of Kartik. And this love that is being demonstrated, as we will discuss over the next 3 days, of the loving relationship between Yashoda and the intense love that Krishna has for Yashoda, and the intense love that Yashoda has for Krishna, is something that is truly remarkable. And therefore, Shukadev Goswami would say at the end of the Damodara Lila that Nemam Virincho na bhavo na Shri Apyanga Sangshraya Prasadam Lebhire Gopir. That na Imam Virincha, not Brahma, not Bhava, not Lord Shiva, not Shri, not even the goddess of fortune, who is Apyanga Sangshraya, who is the better half of the Supreme Lord. Not any of these persons have been able to get the kind of mercy and love and reciprocation that gopi, prasadam lebire gopir, tat prapya vimuktidat, that this gopi, Mother Yashoda, has gotten. So therefore, yena avatarena, Bhagavan Hari Ishvara. When we hear these pastimes of Krishna, they delight the ear, they enchant the heart, Bhakti Harao, they inspire bhakti within the heart of those who hear, and Tatpurushena Sakya, they inspire loving exchanges amongst the devotees. So when we hear about the binding of Yashoda binding Krishna to the mortar. It is a festival of pure love that attracts Krishna and attracts those who want to develop the kind of love following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. So with that, I will stop. Um, and we just have about 1 more minute till 8:30. But if there's any question, if there's any comment that any devotee would like to make, we can do that in a few minutes. And Prabhupada Dev can guide us accordingly.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Antavegra Prabhu. Quite a mouthpiece, I will say, to take us through this part of it. I'm still trying to actually maybe digest, I think, what we just received. Nevertheless, if any devotees have any quick comments or question, you can please unmute and go right ahead. Hare Krishna, anyone?
Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Yes, Raj Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shanta Prabhu, for the wonderful foundation for the following classes. This really illuminating. As you were making the point about Nanda and Yashoda's identity as the Lord's eternal parents and similarly different associates, I always wonder about that Itang Satang Brahma, that Krita Punya Punya, that because of those cowherd boys amassing heaps of pious activities, now Sakambi Jaharu Krita Punya Punya, they have that opportunity to play as the Lord's friend. How do you see that Krita Punya Punya? I mean, what kind of way, are they eternal associates of Krishna, or what punya they have acquired and where? I always wonder about that.
There's two types of, well, one thing I would like to say before that, I was mentioning to Mother Panchatattva last night that, as you look back in your life, it is sometimes the small things that at the time you would overlook. Years later, you would realize had a very big impact on your life. And one of those incidents took place at least 20 years ago, or a little over 20 years ago. I think definitely I was not even first initiated as yet. And myself and Rupa Goswami used to be attending the Sunday feast. He had a car. I had no access to a vehicle, so he used to be passing near to my house. We went to school together, so we had that friendship from since maybe 1992. And he would bring me to the temple, and we would often look forward to meeting Rajarshi Prabhu to hear from him. And in one of our little conversations just before the class actually started in the temple, in an exchange with Rajarshi Prabhu, somehow this topic of the love of the residents of Vrindavan came up. And I don't know if you remember, Raj, but I remember very clearly. And you made this statement that the residents of Vrindavan, their nature is that they don't like Krishna because he's God. They just like Krishna because he's so nice. So, in that same vein, with regard to the types of pious activities that the cowherd boys would have performed, the types of activities that the cowherd boys would have performed is just that they had prema for Krishna. That is all. They just had that desire to be with Krishna, to play with Krishna, free of any intimacy, free of any kind of awe and reverence and majesty. They just had pure love for Krishna. So that is on the level of the liberated soul. On the level of the persons who are aspiring for that, krita, that pious activities means that they would have developed an attraction for a particular resident of the spiritual world, in this case, friends. A particular, and the technical term is called ragatmika bhakta, or somebody, not bhakta because bhakta means one who is practicing, but raga atma, for somebody whose very essence is intense attachment for Krishna, which is characteristic of the residents of Vrindavan specifically. So persons who would have developed raganuga, anuga means following the way of raga. Which raga? Rag atmika. Those persons who have developed that specific sadhana of following the worship of the residents of Vrindavan and nourish their bhakti by that type of sadhana, by the mercy of those residents of Vrindavan, they would get the opportunity to take part in Krishna's Lila in that same mellow of devotional service. So for the liberated jiva, that is their very nature. They can't do anything besides that. Just like I was hearing one story from Madhava, from Gauranga Prabhu. When Krishna went to Mathura and killed Kamsa and killed, Chanura and Mushrika, Kuvalaya, these demons, then Sridham, I don't know how, but Sridham happened to be there. And they said, but Krishna did this. And he said, Krishna did this. But we have heard about these wrestlers and Kamsa being so powerful. Krishna did this? When I fight with Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna never wins. I win Krishna all the time. Krishna is a weakling in comparison to me. How is it that you are saying that Krishna killed Kamsa and Krishna killed these wrestlers and Krishna killed Kuvalaya Pida? Where is Krishna? Let me fight with him and see if this is an impostor, if this is really Krishna. And Krishna started to fight with Sridham, and Sridham thoroughly rinsed Krishna. And Sridham said, yes, this is actually Krishna, no impostor. This is true. Krishna, he must have really done these things. So that is their very nature of love for Krishna. They can't think that Krishna did this, he's some great personality. They just completely absorbed in Krishna because he is so nice. He is so attractive. His devotees in Vrindavan are so nice. They are so attractive. I want to be like them. Is that all right, Rajashri Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. So thank you very much, Rajesh Prabhu. Thank you very much. Yes,
Thanks.
Rajesh Prabhu.
Yes, great. Thanks, Haribol.
Thank you very much, Antavigra Prabhu. We'll close for this evening session, and we humbly request all the devotees to please join in at least by 6:50 on Wednesday evening. Again, we will be doing the Damodar Artik at the temple, the Damodar Astikam. Devotees can get ready with their week and try to connect on video. Simultaneously, you can offer your week to Lord Damodar, and then we will hear the continuation of the Katha, Yasoda, the darling son of, the mother of Damodar, Krishna. So that will, Wednesday evening will be the second session. And then because of some other engagements that we have on Saturday evening and Sunday program, of course, will go on. And then next Monday and Wednesday, His Grace Shantavigra Prabhu will conclude his talk on Pujanam, on worshipping the Lord in the mood of Mother Yasoda and the Brijabasi, as he introduced this evening. Thank you very much, Antavigra Prabhu, to enlighten us and for all your preparation that you would have done, putting together your PowerPoints and everything. We look forward and we cannot wait for the second session. Shri Damodara ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gauda Premanandi, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.